If you had been with me in the car on August 4th, 2020, when I was headed back to the hospital for a meeting with my boss in that torrential storm with the fierce winds and the sideways rain, you would have seen me grip the steering wheel with both hands just to keep the car in the lane. Thankfully, as I pulled into the lot, the storm began to ease up. I parked, I grabbed my umbrella, I got ready to rush inside. But now I could hear the sound of sirens. It's a hospital, sirens are common, but this felt different. I looked up just in time to see a wave of fire trucks coming down the road, going past the ER entrance and turning right. But that's where the daycare is. In that moment, I forgot about everything. I just followed those trucks, and when I arrived, I saw trees snapped, cars overturned, and the roof had been ripped off the building. A tornado, hidden in the storm, had torn through my daughter's daycare. I tried to rush inside, but an officer stopped me. He said, "Stop, ma'am, you can't go in. Please, my daughter's in there. She's just 3 years old." He pointed to a nearby building. They're evacuating who they can over there, and I ran. In that building, in that hallway, it was chaos. And I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, panic beginning to swell. I couldn't think, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. But everything inside me was screaming to act, to do something, but I couldn't. In that moment, a memory surfaced, a lesson I had learned years ago in medical school, something I used and I applied every day as a physician, but never before in my own life until now. When you're facing an emergency situation, before you rush in and you try to do anything, the very first thing you must do is check your own pulse first. Take a deep breath, and then, and only then, do you make your move. So in that busy hallway, I did exactly that. I closed my eyes, I put 2 fingers over my wrist, I felt that pulse, I took a deep breath. One more. And then I began to move. I began searching systematically, room by room, asking teachers and staff for help. I turned a corner, and there she was. She was soaked, wrapped in a towel. I scooped her up. She was trembling, but she was okay. And so was I. And do you think that big breath I took did anything for the storm around me? Not a thing. But it did everything for the storm inside me. You see, when the winds are howling around you and panic begins to rise, remember, we can't even begin to face a storm on the outside until we've conquered the storm on the inside. And we can't lead ourselves or anyone else until we do. We all face storms. Maybe not a tornado. Maybe it's illness or grief or burnout. Maybe it's a phone call where you learn your loved one is sick. Or a mandatory meeting on a Tuesday afternoon where you learn that your whole department has been laid off. Sometimes we face storms together. 2008 financial collapse, COVID, the exhaustion and the fear and the uncertainty that we are all still carrying today. Storms are inevitable. We can't always stop them. We can't always even see them coming. But what we can do is choose how we lead ourselves through them. So how do we do that? Not by carrying it all, not by doing more, but by choosing a different way forward. That breath I took earlier, that pause, it's the first step in what I now call storm leadership. Storm leadership consists of 3 steps: pause, prioritize, and persevere. And when I think back on that August day, I saw it in action. You see, there were 135 children in that building that day. More than 30 teachers, children from newborn age to 5 years old. And every single one of them survived. How? See, the daycare teachers that day did more than just protect lives. They paused, they prioritized, and they persevered. They were storm leaders in action. So let's talk a little bit about storm leadership, starting with that first step, the pause. During times of crisis and overwhelm, maybe it's a phone call that changes everything, or the pressure of 10 competing demands. Our instinct may be to move fast, to fix it, to handle it, to power through. But here's what I want you to consider. To lead yourself well through the storm, you must pause first. And I know that doesn't sound easy, because maybe like me, you were taught that strength looks like speed, that the fastest way to power through is the best way. But pausing isn't weakness, it is wisdom. And this isn't just a motivational idea, it's based on neuroscience. As a physician, I often teach about the brain and dementia. But today, let's learn about the brain in times of crisis. The very front part of your brain, right here, behind the skin and skull and forehead, is known as your prefrontal cortex. It's the executive command center, the leadership part of your brain. It's a part of your brain that helps you make decisions, weigh options, navigate during times of uncertainty, but during times of high stress, crises, your brain is not on your side. When your body floods with cortisol, your primary stress hormone, that leadership part of your brain that you need the most goes offline. And instead, a more primitive part, the amygdala, takes over. The amygdala is like a fire alarm. It is fast, it is loud, it's impossible to ignore. But it can only tell you one of three things: fight, flight, or freeze. Which is why in that busy hallway I froze. My fire alarm was blaring, my command center had gone offline. And when we're facing constant deadlines, constant stress, constant uncertainty, the fire alarm keeps blaring, the amygdala keeps firing, and our leadership brain spends more and more time offline. But here's the good news. There's a reset button, and it lives in the pause. When you check your pulse, you're not just feeling your heartbeat. You're forcing yourself to stop, to hold still, to shift from the chaos on the outside and find that steady beat on the inside. And when you pair it with a deep breath, your racing mind slows, your body steadies, and you create the space that you need to choose instead of just react. Research shows that even a 10-second pause is enough to begin to lower that cortisol level, quiet that amygdala, bring your leadership brain back online. The pause is the difference maker. When the tornado warning came to that daycare and the children began to cry out in fear, the teachers paused just for a few seconds, long enough to take a breath and remember what they needed to do next. And in that busy hallway, I paused too. I checked my pulse, I took a deep breath. See, that's the power of a pause. It doesn't erase the storm, but it helps you steady yourself inside of it, so now you get to decide what your next step will be. Because after the pause comes the plan. Storms demand triage. We can't do everything. We're not supposed to. But when you have overwhelming options, everything feels urgent. Research by Roy Baumeister and Catherine Vos tells us this. Decision fatigue, it is real. And even the most capable leaders, when they have overwhelming options, unless they have a way to differentiate what is most important from what isn't, even they will burn out. To lead yourself well to the storm, you must prioritize what matters most. When the tornado came to the daycare, the teachers couldn't do everything, so they focused. And their number one priority, get every child to safety. Can you imagine the presence of mind that it takes to usher 20 toddlers into a closet while the roof is being torn off? That is leadership in action. And you can do it too. In times of crisis and overwhelm, you can name and rank your priorities out loud. That simple act, naming them out loud, can reduce your decision fatigue, improve your focus, allow you to focus your energy with intention so you can begin to move forward, even through the storm. And we see this in action everywhere. In hospitals, triaging care during an emergency, families recalibrating after a diagnosis, communities rebuilding after a disaster. First you pause so your mind can settle, then you prioritize so you can focus your energy on what matters most. The storms don't end with just a list of priorities. You must still move forward. That's where Persevere comes in. To lead yourself well through the storm, you must persevere with others. With others. Too often we believe that during times of hardship, it's just easiest to go alone. Put our heads down, we power through, we pretend we're fine. But perseverance at its best doesn't mean going alone. Perseverance at its best begins with an inner choice to reach for others. Because isolation doesn't make us stronger. Isolation makes us vulnerable. Physically, psychologically vulnerable. When the tornado came to the daycare, the teachers moved together, picking up babies, guiding toddlers. They persevered together, not in isolation, interdependence. Let me paint another picture for you. In a storm with fierce winds, a single tree standing alone is the most likely to snap and fall. But a forest with roots intertwined, branches forming a canopy, pressure dispersed. The trees that stand together stand stronger for longer. And the strongest amongst us are those that link arms, root deep, and stand tall together. So let me say this clearly. The way you lead yourself through the storm determines how you survive it. When emotions start to surge, pause. Check that pulse, take a deep breath, let that leadership brain reemerge. When everything feels urgent, prioritize. Ask yourself, what matters most right now? And when you feel like giving up, persevere with others. Reach out for support. That's storm leadership. It's not about the tornadoes on the outside or controlling the weather, but about leading yourself well on the inside. It's now been 5 years since that day. 5 years. The daycare has since been rebuilt from the ground up. The walls are new, the roof is new, but if you were to walk with me through the entrance of that building, you would see a pillar lined with bricks taken from the old building. Now, they didn't keep those bricks to remember the fear or the destruction from that day. They kept it to honor the courage and the resilience that started first on the inside. The courage that made rebuilding the outside even possible. Whatever your storm looks like, when it rises, remember to practice storm leadership, to pause, prioritize, and persevere with others, because the fiercest storms were never on the outside. And when you learn to lead yourself well on the inner ones first, you won't just survive, you'll rise above it.